So we just finished week 2 of the build, just coming up to the 3rd weekend. So it's actually Saturday morning this morning. I'd just like to say thanks again to all the people who've been helping out on Facebook and answering my queries and confirming that things aren't impossible when they feel that way. But the car's moved on a bit, so I'm going to go around and we'll have a look at a few bits and bobs that I've been doing this week. And let's start with the engine bay. Not masses have changed in here, and it may not look it, but actually some of these wires have now been cable tied and tried to be routed through semi-sensible places. I'm sure Caterham will have a look at that in their post-build check, just to confirm I haven't done anything silly, but most things seem to be sitting where they need to be now, at least roughly. The throttle cable you can see is all in place and routed around. We were talking about a strange hose that I didn't know where it lived, and it comes from down here inside the manifold. But actually that just roots up and it roots into these magical things, and they're called catch tanks. So they're new since last time. Did some asking around. They don't appear in the manual anywhere, but Academy cars have them as catch tanks, and they get mounted onto the heater blanking plate. So let's just have a quick look at the mounting points. So the heater blanking plate it just sits over the gap where the heater obviously would sit, and it screws and bolts through. You have to. I had to make the holes, so make the holes larger that were already there. They didn't seem to line up, and it goes through and into behind the main dashboard. Now, if you can look up here, you can see that the main fuse box is directly behind, with a whole ton of wires where all these bolts and things were coming out. So it was a little bit, should we say, exciting, making sure that I didn't actually drill through any cables and make any permanent damage, which would have been a nightmare to fix. We actually got around that by shoving a block of wood and some card up behind all those wires, so that if I did punch through with too much force, at least the wood was there to soften some of that. Same with the... I've actually riveted this in place. I know people choose to do different things, but I've riveted it with just a washer behind, and the bottle still seems to sit on okay. So it just sits on there. This one is actually waiting for a hose which will join to the top breather pipe from the rockers up here. So that will route along and it will go into that elbow as this one does. The elbow is fitted just a 20mm drill, you know, one of those big drills that you used to usually drill into wood. Just took a circle out of there, and they're just sat in there at the moment. I'm likely to have to Jubilee clip that on and solid, make it solid. But yeah, the engine bay, other than that one hose that's got to go on, is now fairly complete, and it's nearly, dare I say it, ready for first start. A quick update on the front lights. I think last time we were speaking they were kind of halfway through. I just thought I'd show you that they are now on, and that everything's bolted back on again. The wires all routing through. They're not attached to anything at the moment, but you see all the wires poking through there, ready to be attached to their connector plug and then into the accepting connector there. Same on the other side. So that's quite just a quick update to say that they're on. And an update on the exhaust as well. So when I last did my diary, the exhaust primaries were all loosely attached. So all these were on loosely. As you can see now, we've actually added the catch and catalytic converter there, and it was a pig. It was a horrible job. It was quite nice once it was done. Now it's a horrible job because these springs here. There's one up the top and there's one down the bottom. Now they are reverse springs, if you like. The further these pull out, the more compressed this spring gets. And as with everything Caterham, the tolerances don't allow for it to easily pass over. It's actually at full stretch and it only just manages it. This one we got on using cable ties, so we attached a cable tie to this end, and kept on yanking and breaking cable ties until it just pinged over. The one at the bottom, we got through every single one of my cable ties. I guess we should have thought it was a bad idea. And my end solution, the one that fixed it in the end, I ground off some of this hook, so that's now shorter than it was, so that it would actually reach, because it was actually just maxing out the spring, so I couldn't get it. So that got ground down a bit. Once I got through all my cable ties, I figured I'd try something else. And the method I used was to pass a little screwdriver up through the hook. I levered that screwdriver on the end of the hook until such time as that it pinged over itself and actually sat into place. So that was the method that I used, so a small screwdriver that then just pivoted over and it snapped itself into place. Obviously the exhaust is currently waiting for its silencer to be added. The bolt or the holder to actually hold that bit is in place. Caterham recommend you don't do that until you've put the rear wheel arch on. So once that's in place, we'll get that on. So as you can see, we've also been working on the front cycle wings, mud guards, whatever you want to call them. This front one, I've got the indicator in place. That just involved drilling 3 holes to the size as they say in the manual. See the wiring coming out the other side. We'll talk about that in a minute. 2 front holes just drilled through where they were marked. Got brave and just drilled through, even though I wasn't confident about them. And then the manual describes a whole method of how you go about it. Let me just show you underneath here. Effectively, you have to drill these holes through the wing stay. Also drill one from underneath. I don't know if I can get under here. This one here is for the earth cable, actually, when we're ready to go. And then just the simple matter of feeding the cable down the wing stay, down 2 corners, find an exact location, and then a tiny hole for the wire to poke out of the other end. Now the reason the wire is only half poking out is because I'm only halfway there, because it got so frustrating and I gave up in the end. This I think has to be heat shrunk, which is one of my problems. So that will help us get more room, maybe a bit more solidity to the wire. And we're going to try a few different methods today. But effectively, this one's all drilled, ready to go, and as soon as I've got that wire through, then it will be good. I will feel more relaxed. You may notice also I'm missing a connector on that wire. That's because it's now down in this tube somewhere. I don't know where it pinged off. I accidentally clamped it against or wedged it and pulled the wire out, and it never to be seen again. The other one's just sat there. That's looking better than it is because it's not drilled. You can see the 2 markings that Caterham have put on here for the 2 front drill points, which is fine up until you see the markings that they've put on for the indicator, which are all clearly wrong. They should be up here somewhere. So now I don't know whether these are to be trusted or not, but there you go. I shall drill through them and deal with the consequences if they're not. I've put some more ugly trim around all these openings. In fact, I say all these openings. I've done the bottom one down here. I've done the top one up here, which is ugly. I couldn't even get it onto the front one, so we'll see what happens about that later. As you can see, the rear suspension is pretty much in place now. Just got the brake calipers to go. So last time out we'd just got the differential in with the handbrake cables poking out, so you can see there's quite a lot more gone on in here. You can see that the prop shafts now go into the differential. Now that was an interesting one, because the differential gets supplied with the flanges at the end, which are designed obviously for BMWs. I believe it's a BMW diff now. And they're not needed for the Caterham, so you have to get them out, but actually it's a pretty tricky and physical process to get them out. Let me just show you the bit that comes off. You see these two big hunks of metal down here? So that is actually what comes out of the diff, and you can imagine that feels a little bit wrong to be pulling something that big and meaty out of a diff. But yes, it's designed to come out. How you do it is you get a claw hammer, put the claw into the groove and just lever it away, and we sort of levered and turned and levered and turned and levered and turned, and eventually they just popped out. It did take a while, it took a lot of force, was a little bit more than worrying, but that's what they're designed to do apparently. So those things come off. Let me just come back to the light side. And then the drive shafts can just pop into place. We should probably talk about the Dion tube, because that had to be dry fit before it could go in the car. It's the big long supporting tube here which supports the wheels. You can see that it's got brake piping along the top of it. Now that had to be fit onto the tube before it went in the car. It fits on with little P-clips. And basically the idea of that is to make sure that this end of the brake pipe sits in roughly the right place for when you add the calipers later. We had quite a lot of trouble getting the tube into the car. It was a right old pig. It involved jiggling, poking, taking care not to bend these pipes, which we didn't entirely succeed at. Ended up, we did come in from the side that it says in the manual, but just don't expect it to be an easy job. Expect head scratching and it to be a really tight fit. But once it's in, which is great. It just sits on the chassis rails, which you can see we've protected with some cardboard down here. So that's in place. You can we actually then put on the main hub assembly. So the ears here, they're attached to the tube here, as well as the front hub, which sits in between. That's the front hub, and then obviously the disc front. The prop shaft sits all the way through all those. It does start getting a bit unwieldy at that stage, because you've got a big hunk of metal here, and they don't really like moving around, but there you go. Got the dampers in. Actually, before we got the dampers in, we had to put the roll cage on. We'll come and have a look at the roll cage fitment in a minute. But because the roll cage, there's a bolt up here which has to go up and into the roll cage up there. Obviously you can see, once you've got your damper in place, you cannot get to that bolt. So you have to fit the roll cage before you fit your dampers. There you go. The dampers, they've got a top bolt up there, which looks impossible to get to until you find out that you have an access panel. I do need a laser pointer like someone suggested. There's an access panel in here where you can get the bolt in. It also looks impossible until you realise that Caterham supplied you with the wrong type of bolts for it. You need Allen key cap head bolts that go in there so that you can actually tighten it. They supplied hex heads and that was incorrect. They got the right bolts and then it all made more sense. And then the bottom damper bolt it's underneath. See it down here. So it's underneath the Dion tube down there, and you can see we've got some washers either side, which again is a bit painful to get on, but there you go. Jiggling that all into place position with all these big bits of metal was quite tricky for us, so just be patient and eventually it does go. Yes, when we initially looked at it we thought that these bad boys were the suspension mounts, and clearly that's not the case. So that's for the radius arm, which let's have a look at that now. So the radius arm is here. It's this big bit coming across. Two places you can attach it, higher hole, lower hole. Apparently the higher hole is just for normal road use and the lower hole is for racing, so obviously we went lower. Make sure that these indents, these sleeved areas, are facing outwards from the car so that they give maximum room for the calipers to sit in place. And these bolts were actually pretty simple, so This bolt came from the inside of the car. Again, you can't get the seats in until you've done this bolt. As you can see, there's just no room to do that there. So this bolt went on pretty easy, and with a little bit of tapping and stuff, the rear one went on as well. So that is kind of the rear suspension, and other than the brake caliper, it's in place now. So we're looking forward to putting the calipers on, and then we can start getting the brakes bled and stuff. So as you can see, the roll cage is also in place. It's now actually fixed down as well. It's an interesting one, this, because actually there's a few things that need to be done before the roll cage can go on. It's another one of those, you've got to do one thing before the other. And if you look over the far side, up here, so the bit that's under the dashboard there is actually a panel that you have to insert. It's called the knee trim panel. You can see that there's trimming that sits between the knee trim panel and the main bodywork, and then there's all these screws. So they are self-tapping screws. So basically you have to put the knee trim panel. It doesn't fit, so you just have to put it in as best you can. Drill through, because the holes on the knee trim panel had made no relation to the holes in the front of the car. And then put the trim in, and then screw them all together. That took me a couple of goes to get everything right and in the right order. I also got the trimming wrong around the edge here. Let me just, because it was in a different bag, I'll see if I can find a little bit of it to show you. Here's some. So this is the trimming you're looking for. It's this type. So the long flat panel with a little sort of round bead at the top, and that actually flows all the way along, from all the way underneath the knee trim panel, so this side, all the way along, and then a new piece comes up and makes a nice finish up here. So that just sort of slides down between and gets drilled in or riveted into place. So yeah, we also had to do all these rivets down here, and the rivets along the top here, and then the rivets up the side arch. So you can see how all that needs to be done before the seats can go in as well. There you go. Let's have the scut ledge trim while we're here. Well, this is a new one. So that just sort of squeezes into place, or you just tap it with a rubber mallet or whatever, just to sit it on. It goes all the way around the edge of the dashboard. And then you're pretty much ready and able. Oh, actually, yes, we had harnesses in before, so that's fine. But you have to have harnesses in before you put the roll bar on as well. So you can see all these things kind of tie together. So yep, so we're in place to put the roll cage. It was definitely a 2-3 man job to do it, to get it in. We still managed to damage the paintwork in places. I'm not being too precious about all that. Effectively, you try and seat the front bolts here at the same time as you're seating this bolt, which sort of sits in a cup down there, and then you've got two ones at the rear, which have, you can see the mount there at the rear, and you basically loosely tighten everything, and then gradually, so once everything's roughly in place, then you gradually tighten them all up to their torque settings, making sure everything's good. Just see, there's a bit of clearance between the windscreen and the roll cage, as you can see. All looks good, so I'm pretty sure that's to be expected. Well, I hope it is. And that is the roll cage. So, as you can see, the seats are also in the car at least, and the passenger seat is actually done. It's a bit of a fiddle. Notice a trend here to get all this in place. The passenger seat's actually a lot easier than the driver's seat, which we'll come on to. As you're lowering the seat into place, it's again 2-man job really. You need to get all the buckles and stuff passed through the openings. There's actually the main bit to get through, the tightening strap to get through, and also this buckle. So as you're going down, all three things sort of have to sit and work together. And effectively, I forgot to mention that you attach runners to the bottom of this in the way that the manual suggests. And then the passenger seat, if everything goes well and handy, you can see that there's the bolts underneath the car, which actually are attaching everything in place. Of course they don't line up, and we had to do a bit of grinding, a bit of jiggling of the seat itself, but although as hard as that felt at the time, it was nothing to compare to the driver's seat, which is an adjustable seat, so as I see, it's on runners. Let's come round. So this isn't actually attached, although actually it's half attached, so it's attached at the front. And as you can see, my aunt has a cunning plan for how we're going to get this done, apparently. We'll see. Part of the problem is the bolts. Let's try and get the angle on this. The attachment bolts are under here, can you believe? So you've got to get your hand. Can you see my hand doesn't fit? Well, you have to make it fit. That's why my hand's got bruising on top of it. The bolts are actually under here and pretty inaccessible to drop down and through the bottom of the car. Once they are down and through, you have to then bolt them underneath. And it's apparently, according to the manual, a simple process of sliding the seat backwards to get access to the front ones, and then once the front ones are in, you slide it forward, and you get, oh yeah, plenty of access, sure, to the rear ones. And we've not figured it out yet, because the rear ones are nowhere near going in. I can't get my hand around, I can't get the bolts down. We've tried several different methods, so we're going to keep trying different methods until they go in, or give up and just tell Caterham it's silly and that they should do it for you. But there you go, that's pretty much where we got up to. I can't think I've missed anything out. It'd be nice once the seats are in. And this weekend I got my dad down, so he's your mum as well. So hopefully we'll be getting good move on, get the front wings on, maybe even go for startup.